and welcome to episode 22 of Friends of the Show. I am your host, Stephen W. Skinner. This is a podcast where I get to know some of the funniest and most interesting folks on Twitter. They're the friends of the show. This week's friend is Brian Russell at the Underfold on Twitter. Brian is the creator of the Underfold, a very fun and cool webcomic that has had several iterations. Brian talks about how it all came to be, and we have a swell chat about some nice tweets. Friends of the Show, episode 22, with At the Underfold. Right here, right now.
Sucking at something is the first step to being kinda good at something. Jake from Adventure Time.
Yes, Adventure Time. Thank you very much, Brian, for giving us that quote. Today's guest is Brian Russell at the Underfold. Welcome, Brian.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, yeah. So, big Adventure Time fan?
I was for a while. I haven't been able to keep up. Having 3 kids means negating a couple TV shows every now and then.
But having 3 kids, maybe you can catch up later when they get into Adventure Time.
That's right, exactly.
You just keep those in your back pocket. Yeah, Adventure Time, they're quite prolific, right? Lots of episodes.
They do. They have quite a few, and I started late into it too because I believe, I just missed out on the beginning of it. So I started trying to catch up, and it just feels a little daunting, but it's pretty great though. I really like it.
Yeah, and it's great to have that to always fall back on until you eventually catch up.
Exactly.
Okay, well, just for our listeners, Brian is a talented artist and a funny person. He has created the Underfold webcomic that has been over several iterations through its time online. The latest version launched in January 2016, and it follows Brian through his life raising a family. TheUnderfold.com is the website where everyone can go check that out. Definitely do that. And check out your Patreon, right, to support the arts. Love it.
Yes, please.
Yes. So how's that Patreon thing going? Pretty good?
Patreon's going pretty good, yeah. I've got quite a few people there now, and it's been really encouraging. I think Patreon's one of those things that when it works, it's kind of like magic.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, people like what I do enough to throw money at me. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's got to feel good and help to support you, obviously, your time.
Definitely.
And all the effort that goes into it, It's not drawing itself here, people.
That's right.
And it is, like if you're doing something where it's out every week or, something that's a weekly consistent art, you got to put it out. You got to do the work. You can't take a week off.
That's right. 3 times a week for me.
Whoa, 3 times a week. Is that part of your Patreon pledge? Like, did you start off as 1 and then you hit some goals?
I started off as 2, and I hit a goal to get to 3.
Okay. That's pretty good. You hit a goal, though, right? That's got to be...
That's absolutely right. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So now 3 a week. Oh, that's a lot. That seems like a lot.
I have... I've figured out a rough schedule for myself, so it doesn't feel as daunting now as it did.
Right.
At first, it was kind of one of those, like, I set it as a pretty high, or what felt like a high goal at the time. It was kind of like, well, if I hit it, then, well, at least I'm making money while I'm doing it. And then I hit it, and it was like, oh, okay.
Where am I going to find this time?
Oh, no.
Yeah, but now you've built it into your schedule. You've found the time. You've moved things around. Staying up later, getting up earlier.
That's right.
All right,
well, fit it in.
Glad that you're making it work, and glad to hear that you're still churning them out 3 times a week. Wow, 3 times a week. I guess it's sort of like those old newspaper ones. Those were syndicated, right? 5 times a week.
Sometimes 7, right? I mean, They had the Sunday strips, and they printed on Saturday too.
Back in the day, yeah. So, but you can put it out whenever you want because we're in the age of the internet.
I really could. I feel like if I could, I like having the buffer, so it's nice to kind of be able to work ahead a little bit, but there's definitely parts of me that see the benefit of, just posting all the time. I mean, it's very similar to Twitter, the attention span of the internet is very short.
Oh, yeah, you got to get at that the day joke, the day of, or even like the minute of. You got to be the first one out there with your hot take on the local news, which is never good these days.
That's very true. Good grief.
Yeah, I try to keep this podcast pretty politics-free, but it's starting to seep in just because it's really bad. Really bad.
I feel like,
Yeah, we can agree that it's really bad. I'm in
but
Canada, and it's bad. Like, I'm not even down there, and it's bad.
It's like, for what it's worth, there should not be a political stance to not be a racist.
Yeah, I mean, this is the latest thing that we're doing
out there
now. We got Nazis. They're out. They're proud, and they should not be. So
that's right.
I am taking a public stance here. Going on record. Nazis are bad.
Nazi is bad.
I condemn those people. So now that we've gotten the podcast off to a great start, maybe. There's another thing I want to mention that you do. You have a new podcast about D&D. Is it Awful Good Crew?
We do. It's called Awful Good, and it's me and a couple of my friends, and we are playing Dungeons and Dragons. And it's a live play, so people can just kind of jump in and follow along with us as we go on our adventures, and it's been pretty fun so far.
That's very cool.
I had never. I work in the internet realm, and podcasting is like the one thing that I had never broached, and so it's been an interesting adventure to figure out how it all works.
Yeah, learning a lot of great lessons, I'm sure. Finding out which mic works for you, turning down the bass in your voice to get that deep, bassy sound.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you got to do, right? To get the ladies.
What I do. So, very cool. So, you've just launched. So
my wife from the other room is like, hey, what are you talking about?
So, you guys are pretty new. How many episodes have you done now?
We are up to 4 published, and we have 2 more that I am in the process of editing.
Ah, nice. You got the cycle, the flow going. You built it in.
We're just a little bit ahead.
To your schedule. Oh, that's good. As you know, this podcast runs ahead, so your episode will come out several weeks from now.
Everybody will be like, why are they talking? Hopefully, everyone will be like, why are they talking about Nazis?
Yeah.
That's the hope.
That'll have been cleared up by then. In the future,
let's all just hope that goes away by this point.
Oh, that would be great. All right, well, so shout out to Awful Good, the Awful Good Crew on Twitter at Awful Good Crew, and if you're into the Dungeons and Dragons lifestyle, definitely go check that out. I myself have never played, but it seems like fun.
I hadn't played until we started playing, actually.
Oh, really?
This is one of my first times going through it, so it's been really fun.
So you're learning all about podcasting. You're learning about D&D. Learning about Patreon subscribers and their impact on your schedule.
Wow. Just getting in there. Might as well. Just dump in 2 feet.
Definitely. All right. Well, I guess that catches everyone up. So now let's get into your story. I sort of combined the 2 stories that you wanted to tell. So into part 1 and part 2. So part 1, how the Underfold began.
Oh, sure. Great. Well, the Underfold began as, well, one thing you should know about me as well, and you probably do because, this is a Twitter-based podcast, is that I am a smart aleck, like most of us on the internet. And I used to be the person that unlocked the church, my local church, and made coffee in the morning. And I would do coffee, regular coffee, decaf coffee, and then there was a carafe for hot water. And they all looked, exactly the same because they're carafes. And so I started putting up little signs, and I would put sassy things on them, like, I don't know why you're drinking decaf. It seems like a joke. And then, because I had to label them because they all look the same.
Okay.
But I would go far enough as to label the lemonade as well because I'm a jerk. Everything else is labeled. Why not label the lemonade? So I would put things on there like the lemonade was like not pee, things like that.
Real classic stuff.
What?
No, real classic gag. The lemonade being pee.
Real classy stuff, right in the middle of the church foyer. And so eventually, as you could imagine, people stopped being okay with it. It's probably the safest way to say that. And they asked me to stop, and so I was like, no. And what I did was they were all folded index cards. And so what I started doing was I started drawing cartoons on the underside of the fold and just started calling it the Underfold. And for whatever reason, I had always wanted to draw a cartoon, and one morning it was just like, this is what's happening. And so I would draw cartoons on the underside of the fold for the 4 people that knew it existed.
Oh, so you're hiding it from the authority figures.
That's right. It all started from a rebellious state.
Wow.
And it just kind of grew from there. I think eventually I started a Facebook group, started scanning in the ballpoint pen pictures that I had drawn. And then, a little as things do, you get a little bit more difficult about it. And I started drawing them on the computer and started printing out templates. And then, it all went, depending on how you view my comics for a couple years, uphill or downhill.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you got to get that this 10,000 hours somewhere. You got to get hour 1 in. So that's pretty cool. So you were scanning the original coffee cards in as the original first episode of the Underfold.
Yeah, and it was all very insular. I'm not really sure why I leave them up. I think I've had them a little bit hidden. But they were very, inside jokes, referring to people like within the church, and because it was, there were 5 people reading it, so why not reference all of them? It's been interesting. That was 9 years ago.
Oh wow! And, almost a cool deck.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So, as you mentioned, it'd been through a couple iterations. I've started and stopped it along the way just as my whims have changed. And for a while, I stopped it altogether and started trying to draw a graphic novel version of it. I was coming out with individual comic books. And I realized that what I was doing was I was still being really inside jokey. Pretty much if you hadn't read 7 years worth of material... then you weren't getting jokes. And I mean, who doesn't want to read that, right? Right?
You really need a deep...
Come on, guys.
You need like an Underfold wiki. Go back and get all the jokes.
And I mean, to be fair, there have been fans that have stuck around since the beginning, and they're always... Well, actually, I believe we'll get to a question about it later, so I'll save it. But yeah, so I'd stopped that, and I tried my hand at doing a sci-fi graphic novel, which I was having a lot of fun doing, but at the same time I burned myself out. It was a lot more work than I wanted it to be, just with growing family and everything, and so I decided to stop it. And so I wasn't doing anything for like a couple months. I won't even say that it was that long. And when my son was born, I was like, I have a great idea for a comic for when he comes. And that was the rebirth. That was the rebirth of the Underfold. As of 2016 in January, I posted the first comic a week before he was born. I had another great idea. And my main idea was to avoid inside jokes as much as possible.
Okay,
and
yeah, I get it. You've been burned before by too many inside jokes.
Well, I realized it had been 7 years, 8 years, and my audience has not grown, and so I looked at what a bunch of other people were doing, and I was like, okay, I realize that these are all funny to me, and I still want to make myself laugh. So let's make myself laugh, but don't require people 7 years worth of knowledge,
right? To
really get the joke. Like let's be a little bit more general about things,
and a little more accessible.
Accessible. That's accessible, relatable. And so I started making comics about dad jokes and video games, and just kind of went from there. And I work in an office, so naturally I had always gravitated towards Dilbert, as my father had worked in a corporate office world. And so I started gravitating towards IT comics as well. And so now the reinvention of the Underfold is pretty much family, job, and then random stuff. anything other than that.
Yeah, it's kind of like your life, right? Like draw what you know. Draw like the everyday stuff, right? Like you were saying, when your son was being born, that's when the great idea hit you. Those are the ones I think that really hit those like strike of genius epiphany ideas, and you got to write it down right away and draw it, I guess, into a comic before it goes away from your memory forever. So I find those are the best ones.
Yeah, and that's still probably one of my favorites. I don't want to necessarily tamper with it because it was a moment, but I had it. I had him being born, and the doctor hands me the baby, and I hold it above my head like Link with the Triforce, and it said like "Dad joke, level up."
Nice. I get it. Because now, extra dad. You're extra daddy.
That's right. More dad power.
Dad level increase.
Exactly.
Very good. So I guess that's the part 2, the reinventing, the Underfold. So it's the son being born, and that brings us through the current iteration of today. So that's like the family stuff, the fun job stuff, the crossover stuff. I think you did a crossover with another Twitter person recently. I thought that was pretty cool.
I did. I have for a little while, and I still do it occasionally. It's actually one of my Patreon levels. Is that I was doing some. I was asking people if they would be okay with me turning their tweets into comics. I think I actually have one of yours that I wanted to ask about in the future.
Ooh,
but,
oh my!
But yeah, hot take, hot news, spoilers. And but yeah, I started. There were a couple comics or a couple tweets that I just thought were like these are just really funny, and they would work perfectly as a visual gag too. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, hey, what would you think if I made a comic out of your tweet? And pretty much everybody has been like, that would be amazing. Please do that. That would be great.
Yeah, it is cool.
I'm like, I'll leave your Twitter handle on it. I love that. It's not my joke. So please, take all the credit for it. I just drew people around it.
Proper attribution is key for those jokes and for those tweets getting drawn into cartoons. There's a few different people out there who do it. Twoodle is a very good one of my faves who draws people's tweets. But always with attribution, and he does a really great job. I think I've had mine drawn by I draw your tweet guy. It was okay. But yeah, a lot of people do it, and it sometimes works out, sometimes doesn't work out as well. So it's a fun challenge, I'm sure, for you.
It is. I for a while I was only, and I still do. I have one guy that's on a Patreon tier that, so I draw one of his tweets every month at the moment. And
Sweet tier.
Yeah, it's pretty great, and he also is it also comes with a starring role in the comic. So once a week, his character is actually in the comic. Or an avatar of him, I guess. So yeah, it's been pretty fun though. It leads to a lot of variation. It pushes me a little bit, but I always try and find ones that I think would work as a visual gag, because I think there's so many jokes on Twitter that are funnier told non-visually because they're word gags.
Yeah. Yes, well, sometimes
especially yours.
Yeah,
they're very similar.
A lot of my stuff just can't be explained. It's just a simple pun or just wordplay. But a lot of stuff, you create your own visual, and it's sort of up to that person's mind's eye to create the scene in their mind. And sort of sometimes that's what makes it extra funny.
Well, and some of the funniest tweets to me are the ones that like set up a really normal setting and then flip it at the end. So you're picturing something, and then you're like, oh, okay, that would be ridiculous.
God, tweets. They're great. So I guess that brings us to today, and now you're all caught up, right? You got your Patreon crew, you got your 3 times a week cartoons that are coming out, cartoons, and your podcast. So you're a busy little dude. I try to keep busy. Yeah, appearing on podcasts. Thank you very much. Woohoo, thank you. And you were on the BT140. Shout out to BT140. All right, so now that everyone has a great idea of the history of the Underfold and yourself, we will get into your tweets. Awesome. So the first tweet that you have selected from @TheUnderfold on Twitter is a conversation between your wife, you, and the kids. So the wife says, "Oh, you made bacon for the kids this morning." And you say, "Yes, the kids, they ate it all." The kids say, "There's bacon?" You say, "No, you ate it, remember?" Those kids, they didn't get the bacon, you ate the bacon. It's just a classic funny dad, right? The dad's being a goof. He ate all the bacon, right. Blaming it on the kids. That's right. And I'm assuming that really happened and you ate all the bacon. Wow. Yeah. No. based in August 17th, 2016. 9:44 a.m. I think we know who ate all the bacon.
Listen, I can't help it if they don't make it there in time.
I mean, I guess their little legs can only get to the kitchen so fast.
Especially when you put up, chairs and close the doors.
And yeah, by the time the smell of bacon got to their room, it was already eaten.
Yeah, it was gone. I mean, they can have waffles.
Yeah, waffles, kids. It's healthier, right? You don't want them having... It's a parenting decision to keep them away from that greasy food.
I mean, really, I'm just saving them.
Exactly. You're thinking of their arteries.
That's right.
Like, I read an article in between mouthfuls of bacon. That bacon was bad for you. Nom, nom, nom.
Saving your life.
I'm saving you right now. Honey, we know you're going to need more bacon.
P.S. Please get more bacon while you're at the store.
Yeah.
It seems to magically disappeared.
Bacon on the list. All right, well, there you go. First tweet from Brian. Second tweet. Maybe you would like to read the second tweet.
Sure. Me entering hell. Hello, devil. We'll do the pun-ishing around here. We both smile slow. I see what you did there. And we laugh.
Just a classic. You and the devil, just best buds. Joking it up for all eternity in
laughing
Hades.
It up.
I guess that is what hell would be like. Just fun jokes. Just ribald.
It just sounds like a great place, really. I mean,
From what I've heard about it, there's different levels, but whatever level you're on there, that's a good one. The circle of hell that is just puns. Sign me up.
Yeah, it's the punishing level, I guess.
So I guess being a church-fearing, church-going individual, you're pretty interested in this concept of hell and punishment?
Well, I saw a really funny joke. I think the funny part to me is, just the idea of the juxtaposition of, you're going into a place where everybody fears a whole lot, and then kind of just making light of it. I have gone on to make quite a few selling my soul to demons jokes, which gets a real good laugh.
Like a recurring theme
at the church.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's the thing, right? The church folk, this is the kind of stuff that really pushes their buttons. It's subject matter that they know.
That's really the running gag is pushing the buttons of the churchgoers.
Really, yeah, I mean, it started with the coffee, and then it escalated from there to straight up chatting with the devil.
That's right. Hanging out,
just
loving
chilling
life.
with the devil. Pretty wild stuff. And looks like you tweeted that in October, close to Halloween.
I think most of these may have been involved in contests.
Okay, so you submit to a lot of contests. So weird little part of Twitter is like tweet calls, which we love to submit. You send in your tweets to different people who are asking to see them. Sometimes it's a contest where they'll ask for a specific theme, or they will put up a theme and say, you got to write a new tweet on this one. And then people will say, okay, yeah, and they'll write a tweet, and then they'll send it into the contest, and maybe they will win a trophy on the internet.
A fake trophy.
Really, it's not even anything. It just is.
It feels so good,
the
though.
idea of a trophy. I agree. And for everyone who's given me a trophy, thank you very much. I do not discredit it at all. It does feel great. Thank you, Favestar and Tim Haynes, for being able to monetize what Twitter was not able to do.
That's right.
So for everyone giving those trophies out, keep doing it. Keep doing it, guys.
Give more to me.
Yeah, but I really love those contests because it does sometimes get you to write outside of out of your comfort zone, or think of something in a different way that you might not have, right? Or write a joke on a certain theme that maybe you wouldn't normally. So.
Well, and two, I think so far both of these tweets I wound up turning into comics later, actually.
Oh, okay. Do you do that with most of your or do you wait to see if it does good? If it's a popular tweet, then...
It depends. It depends on how much I enjoy it. I don't know if you heard how much I was laughing at the bacon one.
Right.
There's some of them that I just crack up at, so I don't. There's a part of me that doesn't care.
Yeah,
it's like, this one's happening regardless. I don't care if it gets a lot of retweets or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, definitely if one of the tweets fits my same criteria for anybody else's tweets, that it would just be a really funny visual gag along with the thing, then I'm like, well, let's go there then, because that's what my aim is to create a webcomic. So it's been a pretty interesting testing ground.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of them for sure would not work at all, and some of them would work, and some of them you wouldn't even know until you do it.
That's right.
Okay, so we get to the third tweet from Brian Russell at The Underfold, and it is like this. Your wife says, "Sometimes women like bad boys," and then you say, "Well, I just replaced the real garlic in this recipe with powdered garlic." And your wife fans herself. Ooh, she's getting hot and bothered because you replaced real garlic with powdered garlic. Bad boy. Bad boy style. I bet that's just one of the many badass things
one of the many
you do.
Bad guy traits I have.
Eating all the bacon. Who ate it? Who cares? The kids ate it. So,
there were so many people that were like, "You've gone too far."
But this one, the Bad Boys one, really caught a nerve.
There were quite a few comments of people that were like, "Too far. You can't do that."
I would side with those people, but
I do too. I just thought, it's I did it. This was actually based relatively on an exaggerated true story.
I knew it. I knew you dropped that garlic. It's okay if you're out of garlic, but if you have the garlic and you choose to use powdered garlic, it's no forgiveness.
I didn't want to wash anything else.
I get it. It's a laziness.
So we have like we have like a garlic press.
Yeah.
Where I could have gotten a knife and sat there for 20 minutes trying to chop a very tiny piece of garlic, or I could just dump some powder into a thing.
A pinch of powder, same great taste, right?
So yeah, it's close. It's close.
It's close. Probably not as good for you, but
details.
What's done is done, Brian, and let that be a lesson to the listeners. Women like bad boys.
That's right.
That's the main lesson. Well, thank you very much for submitting those tweets. Always lovely to get people sending in their tweets. Everyone go follow Brian at The Underfold for more jokes like this that might turn into comics one day. Now, we get to your picks from other folks, other people on Twitter that you should follow, such as your first pick, Ginger Hot Dish at Ginger Hot Dish on Twitter, and her tweet that you have selected goes like this. Goes into liquor store, buys 8 bottles of wine. The store clerk says, "Having a party?" Nope. Have a nice weekend. See you tomorrow. So, in case you couldn't understand, there was a prolonged silence between the store clerk and the person buying 8 bottles of wine. And the store clerk says, "Have a nice weekend." And then the person buying the wine says, "See you tomorrow." Classic joke from Ginger Hot Dish. She loves that wine.
I'm not trying to promote alcoholism, but that one just caught me off guard, and I've never forgotten it. I have it literally bookmarked in a favorites folder because it cracks me up.
That's exactly what I'm looking for these kind of tweets. These ones that make you laugh out loud in real life, affect you on an emotional level where you'll always remember reading it, and every time you read it you get that same little spark of enjoyment. So thank you, Ginger Hot Dish, for laying that out for us. 8 bottles of wine, why not?
Wine not.
Wine not.
Sorry.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
I'll cut that out.
I know you have a higher level of comedy here, so I'll keep it.
I can cut that out.
That
no
to myself.
problem. Yeah, we'll just snip that out. No problem. From friend of the show, Will Benjamin at Upside Down Trash on Twitter. Do you have this one in front of you? Maybe you could read it.
I do. Sure.
Okay. Or we could role play. I'll be one character and you can be the other one. I will be the wife.
Okay.
Ready? It's either me or the...
He has a name.
Or the goose.
Say it. Say his name. Why won't you love Tom Hanks?
Classic Will tweet, and it was very nice of you to correct the typo in the tweet that a lot of people glaze over, but he has name. Probably my favorite. It's like huge tweet, so popular, and everyone just overlooks that typo, and I'm glad that they do, because I think it's a hilarious tweet, and I'm glad that the typo stayed. It's so funny.
This is one of the ones that I made into a comic.
Yes.
I love this one so much.
Well, I'll have to include a link to that as well in the show notes, because everyone knows Will's one of the best, so everyone should be following at Upside Down Trash for great tweets like this, Hotel California tweets, and check out his episode of the podcast too. It's a very fun one. Tom Honks, a classic tweet. Instant classic. Okay, so the next tweet we got here, the third and final tweet that you have selected from literally hundreds of tweets possible, is from our pal Boog at Boog Tweets. And it is a conversation between him and his dad. And his dad says, "What is taking him so long to get me that crowbar?" And then it's him applying for a liquor license. "Yes, I'm serious. It's just for crows." Boog, you rascal. There's a lot of different ways to interpret crowbar.
Oh, man.
See? You can make a pun even when there isn't one.
So good.
So good. Shout out to Boog. Everyone follow him for a frogging good time. Quality tweets just like that every day. Great. So why'd you pick this one? This is another one where it affected you on an emotional level?
It's one of those ones where I read it and I was like, what? And I came back and I was like, oh no.
Oh, Boog.
Oh, that's a good one.
Got me again. Yeah, those ones where you have to go back to really, the punchline will hit you extra hard.
I find that when I have to think about a pun, the hardest is when I love it the most. When I, by the end of it, you need to hate yourself for laughing at it, that's the epitome of puns.
Yeah, that's a common theme. I think I've discussed that before. A lot of people feel the need to groan, or they feel physical pain. They feel ill when they see a pun like that. But it's
when I get to that point, though, I laugh the hardest because I love it so. I love that I got there.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Part of the battle is getting it.
There used to be a webcomic that I followed for a long time. It was called Octopuns, and they would draw these really horrendous-looking octopuses. And I don't even think they had the right amount of arms. But there was just something about it where every single one was the most obscure visual pun, and it was so hard to understand what was happening. And it was always that same it was kind of like you had to be Sherlock Holmes, and then by the time you figure out what's happening, you're just no, okay.
It was not worth my 5 minutes thinking about this.
I would recommend that comic so many times to people. It's been so many years.
Octopuns.
No, it still exists.
Everyone go check it out. Octopuns.
I wonder if it's still up.
See if you can. Yeah, let's see if it's still up. Then we can send people to the link.
It sure is still up. Octopuns.blogspot.com.
Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah.
Last updated in 2014.
Yeah, those are some cute octopi.
These are much better than when I used to read it.
Really cool stuff. So shout out to Octopuns. Sorry that they gave up or moved on to whatever they did, but still the old stuff's out there. Go check it out. All right, and now we get to questions from Twitter. Bow, bow, bow. And the first question comes in from friend of the show, Abby Cohen at Abby Cohen WL on Twitter. And Abby asks, do you pronounce envelope like envelope or envelope? And what is wrong with people who pronounce it the other way?
Well, I have to admit that I pronounce envelope differently depending on whether I'm using it as a noun or a verb. I believe that things are enveloped in something, but I believe if you were to grab an envelope, it would be envelope. So I would go both ways, actually. And I think anybody that says any differently is a monster.
Okay, monster. Right. But it's the different word, right? Like envelop and envelope.
It's true, but they are spelled exactly the same. They're technically the same word.
Okay.
It's used differently. I think if you were to say something along the lines of like, oh, that enveloped him, I'd be like, ew, what? Why would you say it like that? Like I feel like I would probably be offended by it.
Okay, right. But envelop, like, there's no E.
Yeah, it's true.
But that's okay. Like enveloped or enveloped.
That's right.
This question is digging us into a deep rabbit hole. Envelope.
I wonder if I do say envelope every now and then. I think I do. I think I used to say envelope. I don't know.
I say envelope. So
I'm not going to lie. If I'm talking to someone from Britain or Canada, I will occasionally add in a U to words like color.
You know
just
what?
because it feels awkward
that.
Not to.
I appreciate that.
Look, I'm coming to your house.
Good one. Last episode, Kellen kept translating the Canadian things I was saying for the American audience. So there is a little bit of translation required. Yeah, and you is a big thing, right? Like my favorite, not favorite.
That's right.
We love those U's.
Gotta add it in there.
Well, there you go, Abby. Thank you very much for submitting a question. And the next question comes from the Obscure Gent himself, Lord Goomba at Obscure Gent on Twitter. Okay, here we go. Where's the guy with the bag on his head and bring back the tentacle arms? So this is some inside, deep canon, Underfold, inside knowledge question, right?
It's true. For years, as I mentioned, I had 7 years worth of inside jokes going on in my webcomic, and so I originally had a character who I'm still fairly a lazy artist when I want to be, but I used to be really lazy, and I didn't want to draw my friend's face because I felt like I might make him look dumb. And so instead, I just made a running gag that he was always wearing a bag on his head to avoid looking dumb.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, the bag had facial features because, it's funny. And then at some point, to enhance my laziness, I got really tired of drawing hands. And for my birthday that year, I decided that I was not going to draw hands anymore. Everyone had tentacles. And I made a comic about it, how everybody just suddenly had tentacles. And
all of a sudden, that's canon.
And that was canon, and that went on for a few years, actually.
Wow.
That went on until I ended it for a while.
Wow, that is nuts. So how is tentacle arms easier to draw than hands?
Because it's just kind of a loose cone, like a noodly cone.
Noodly cone with a bunch of circles?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I went with.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
It's a lot easier in hands.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I respect that dedication to laziness where you just are just like, it's like this now. Forget you.
I felt like as long as I made it like a point in the comic, that was another thing, as I was very self-aware. And the comics were self-aware.
Right.
There were so many mentions of fourth wall breaking that I don't think the fourth wall existed anymore. And it was just kind of a weird, surrealist situation going on.
Breaking the fourth panel.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So bag on the head guy was your friend. Tentacle arms was just pure laziness.
Yep.
Or a stroke of genius. Think about how many hours you're saved by just drawing tentacle arms instead of hands, right?
Well, and the thing is because I continued to be insular and was self-referential. I eventually tried to come up with a backstory for why they wound up with tentacle arms, and it was like completely, you sometimes just make overly complicated things for things that don't need overcomplication at all.
Yeah. So that's what I did. What was the Coles Notes version on tentacle arm land?
Oh, they eventually found a time machine at one point, and I don't know why. I don't know why. They just found one, and it was a phone booth because that's the best kind of time machine.
Okay. It's not a TARDIS, right? It's just a time machine.
It was a Bill and Ted style.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm talking
American phone booth.
American style time machine in a phone booth, not some fancy dancy British TARDIS.
That's right.
Okay.
I guess technically they were kind of the same deal.
Very similar.
It was like an American TARDIS, and George Carlin, I guess, was a Time Lord.
I mean, I guess. There's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Stole a lot from that, I think.
Indeed. So Time Machine was involved, and then all of a sudden... So they went back in time? Or
There's a time machine, and they left some nuclear waste somewhere, and some octopuses or something like that, like buried them near the house. And, that was my
all the usual suspects to worldwide tentacle arms. You got your time machine, right. You got your octopi, you got your nuclear waste, the triumvirate of tentacle arms.
I mean, that's all there is to it, right? I mean, that's what you need.
That's the long and the short of it, of the tentacle arms. So thank you very much, Lord Goomba at Obscure Gent. Definitely go check out his comic as well. Brian, I don't know if you know more about it, if you want to plug him.
Yeah, the Obscure Gents, they've been webcomic friends for a really long time, probably since about the time that we both started. So we've been hanging out online together for a long time. Great comic. And their artist, Aaron, is amazing.
Yeah, very cool.
Good.
It's like realistic, like sort of lifelike stuff. The Obscure Gentleman comic. You should Google it and check it out. And go ahead and follow Lord Goomba at Obscure Gent on Twitter. And yes, Aaron, good artist there.
Yes, definitely.
Very cool. All right. So the next question, we keep this podcast train a-rolling, comes from Daryl Troxell at Raydred on Twitter. He asks, does Brian own a motorized scooter? If so, please demonstrate how it sounds. In fact, if Brian does not have a scooter, how would it sound? So he's covering all his bases. He really wants to hear you make the scooter noise.
Just want to hear scooter noise. I do not own a scooter. I have too many kids for a scooter, and I'm in Florida, so it rains all the time. So scooters just seems like a bad idea. I guess if I had one...
Let's hear it.
Like, what does scooters sound like? Are they just like... That's a terrible... That doesn't what scooters sound like.
You know this is an imaginary scooter, right?
I know, but you got to be realistic here. These people want this. I mean, clearly, he sent in this question on purpose. I feel like my scooter would probably sound like some really high-pitched whine, like that. Okay. It'd be really annoying. And it'd be like, why? Why did you get that scooter?
Yeah, something's wrong with your scooter.
Please stop.
No, I asked for this one. Like, oh, jeez, Brian.
A special order.
Well, okay, so pretty high-pitched whine of a scooter. My scooter sound, in case you're wondering, Daryl, would be like this. Because like almost out of gas all the time.
That's a good scooter noise.
It's a scooter almost out of gas, also.
I feel a little ashamed.
Well, you asked for the high-pitched whiny one, so...
It's true.
No one to blame but yourself, my man. Well, there you go, Daryl. Thank you for sending in a question also. And finally, from Paul Graves at Gun Graves. He asks, has Brian ever considered that his life is being drawn out by a cartoon Brian in an odd twist of reality?
I feel like if there was a cartoon Brian drawing me out, then life would be a lot less detailed.
Oh, right. Yeah, and everyone would probably have tentacle arms. At least
he would have gotten lazy by now. This has been a long time going.
Yeah, at least for some of it. At least for like your childhood years when you're just getting started.
That's right.
So you don't believe that you're actually being drawn out by a cartoon Brian in an odd twist?
I don't think so. If I am, he is a much better artist than I am.
Very photorealistic.
That's right.
Great. So I think you did it. You answered all of the questions. Thank you to everyone who has submitted a question at FOTS Pod for future guests. Send them in some questions. It's fun. We're doing it. All right, so I guess we begin the slow wind down of the end of the podcast. And I think, well, my notes here say talk about all the stuff you're doing, but we already talked a lot about that. So is there anything else that you would like to discuss in this final moments of the podcast?
Oh, man.
No, putting you on the spot here.
I know.
Live show. Producers pointing and yelling. He's like, stretch it out.
So, if anybody wants a hand-drawn avatar in my cartoonish style, you can actually see a couple of them online. then there's a Patreon tier for that. And I'm just saying, there's a sponsor page with your Twitter listed. It might be something that you'd be interested in.
You hear that, Twitter people?
Just saying.
Yeah, you hear that, Twitter people? That's the demo of this podcast, and that's the demo Brian is trying to reach. People who need a new cartoony AVI for their Twitter handle or for whatever else you need. For your LinkedIn, even.
Yeah, I mean, that's what my LinkedIn is.
That'd be very
I don't know why you would do anything different.
It'd be very surprising when the people think that they're hiring a cartoon and a real human shows up to the interview. Hi, Jinx and Sue.
Hi, Jinx and Sue.
All right, well, do you want to do any shout-outs to your fam and the crew or anything else?
Sure, definitely a shout-out to Awful Good Crew, all of them there doing their thing. Shout out to, if you are into Dungeons & Dragons podcasts, check out World Walkers on iTunes. They're great as well. Yeah, definitely, we've already done a shout out to him, but Obscure Gent for kind of getting me into the sweet 5-star lifestyle.
Ah, that's how you got in? And now,
now
you're in it, you're giving out trophies, you're getting trophies, you're participating in contests, you're holding your own contests.
I try sometimes. It's very hard to keep track of.
It is, and sometimes it gets crazy busy. A lot of people send in this stuff, and it's hard to keep up, especially if you have to produce 3 comics a week on time, or the people will revolt.
It's a lot of fun, though.
The Patreon backers. It is fun, and I'm glad that you kept doing it even after your little hiatus, and I hope that you keep doing it into the future, and maybe people will somehow get other types of arms for years in the future. We'll see. Like, oh, every few years he changes what the arms are. Ooh, cool. Like, that's his thing. So I'm hoping that we'll see some sort of fancy futuristic robot arms in the future for everybody.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun.
It should be a Patreon goal. Like, if I raise a certain amount of money, like everybody gets tentacles and robot arms.
Oh, you would get to choose what kind of arms. Oh, that could be hard. Could be harder. Could be easier. We don't know.
You never know.
Great. Well, I think that basically brings us to the end of the show. I want to thank Brian Russell for joining us. Everyone follow him at The Underfold on Twitter.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now I will play the music, and we will say our goodbyes. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And I'll see you on the internet.
Woo!
Take it easy. Catch you next time. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode with Brian. If you did, we'd love to hear from you. Send us a message at FOTS Pod on Twitter, and be sure to ask a question for a future guest. Now, also go on ahead and follow at Skinner Steven, because that would just be darn right nice. And also visit StephenWSkinner.com for all the old episodes, and subscribe and get a new episode via the magic of technology every Monday. Thank you to Ruby Coast for providing the music. And thank you so very much for listening all the way to the end of the show, which this is. This is Stephen W. Skinner saying, have a great one.